They feared the whispers of humanity's elite, the silent shadows that struck without mercy. But when the regular soldiers arrived, marching in daylight, fearless and relentless, the galaxy finally understood. Humanity never needed legends to win wars. Every human was one. The misconception, the Galactic Concordance had existed for 8 millennia, a coalition of 63 species spanning 4 star systems. In all that time, they had encountered exactly 3 species capable of interstellar warfare. 2 had been absorbed peacefully into the Concordance. The 3rd had been destroyed after a brutal conflict that lasted 3 generations. When the sensors first detected the human vessel approaching the outer marker of Concordance space, Supreme Strategist Krelvas felt a familiar mix of curiosity and caution. The vessel was crewed by Concordance standards, held together with welded titanium plating and powered by fusion cores that would have been considered obsolete 2,000 years ago. Yet it had crossed the void between stars, which meant these creatures possessed something valuable: ambition. Krelva stood in the observation sphere of the flagship Eternal Vigilance, his forearms clasped behind his segmented back. His species, the Thexali, had led the Concordance military for 6,000 years. They were bred for war, genetically perfected over hundreds of generations. Every Thexali warrior began training from the moment they could walk, spending 20 cycles mastering combat before they ever saw actual battle. Beside him, junior tactician Melissarin studied the incoming data, with her optical enhancements glowing softly. She was young for her position, barely into her 3rd century, but her analytical mind was sharp. The readings on the human vessel concern me, strategist. Their weapon systems are remarkably efficient given their technological limitations. Krelvas made a gesture of acknowledgement with his upper left arm. What concerns me more is their speed of development. According to our reconnaissance probes, they achieved nuclear fission only 200 cycles ago. Now they cross the stars. Either they are exceptionally gifted or exceptionally dangerous. Perhaps both. The human vessel, designated the UESS Pathfinder, transmitted a greeting in 17 different mathematical languages before finally receiving a response. Within hours, diplomatic channels opened. The humans requested an audience with the Concordance Council. They came, they said, in peace and curiosity. They wished to learn if they were alone in the universe. They were not, of course, and that knowledge would change everything for them. The diplomatic delegation arrived 3 solar rotations later. 5 humans emerged from their vessel, wearing matching dark blue uniforms with strange insignias on their shoulders. The lead human identified herself as Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo. She was tall by human standards, with dark skin and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they observed. Behind her walked 2 others in similar diplomatic attire, and 2 in slightly different uniforms with weapons openly displayed on their hips. Ambassador Okonkwo addressed the Concordance Council with remarkable composure for a species making first contact. She spoke of Earth's history, its diverse cultures, its struggles and triumphs. She spoke of humanity's desire to join the greater galactic community, to learn and share knowledge. High Chancellor Voxrin, a crystalline being of pure energy contained within a magnetic field, responded with the traditional words of greeting. The Concordance welcomes humanity. Your achievement of faster-than-light travel demonstrates your species' worthiness for consideration. However, as with all potential member species, we must assess your capabilities and compatibility with our existing structure. The process was standard. Diplomatic exchanges, cultural assessments, technological reviews, but Krelvas was most interested in the military evaluation. He had studied the humans carefully over the past rotation since their arrival. The 2 armed individuals with the diplomatic team were from something called the Marine Corps Security Force. Through careful observation and discreet scanning, Krelvas had determined these were among humanity's elite warriors. Their physical conditioning was remarkable. Their weapons, while primitive, were well maintained and clearly familiar in their hands. Their awareness of their surroundings was constant and professional. Most impressively, they carried themselves with a quiet confidence that reminded Krelvas of his own finest warriors. He compiled a detailed report on these human elite forces, which he called Vanguard units based on their diplomatic protection role. The report emphasized their potential as military allies. If all of humanity's elite soldiers were of this caliber, they would be valuable additions to the Concordance defense fleet. But he needed to see more. He needed to see them in action. Melissarin brought him additional intelligence gathered from the humans' own information networks. Strategist, I have discovered something fascinating. These humans have an information network called the Internet, where they freely share enormous amounts of data. I have been studying their military history. It is extensive and violent. They have been in nearly continuous warfare somewhere on their planet for their entire recorded history. Krelvas felt his combat glands secrete slightly, a physiological response to potential threat. That is concerning. A species that cannot achieve internal peace may bring instability to the concordance. Melissarin's optical implants flickered. That was my initial assessment as well. However, upon deeper analysis, I believe we have misunderstood. They do not wage war out of pure aggression. They wage war over resources, ideologies, and territories. But they also show remarkable restraint. They have developed extensive laws of warfare, agreements on treatment of prisoners, restrictions on civilian targeting. They are capable of extreme violence, but they choose to moderate it. That makes them even more dangerous, Krelvas thought. A species that understands violence and chooses when to employ it is far more formidable than one that acts on instinct alone. He made a decision. I am requesting a joint military exercise. We will propose it as a standard assessment procedure. The humans will send their finest warriors, these vanguard units, and we will observe their capabilities firsthand. The proposal was made during the next diplomatic session. Ambassador Okonkwo listened carefully as Krelvas explained the request. It is standard procedure for all species seeking concordance membership. We conduct joint training exercises to assess tactical compatibility and military doctrine. We would request that Earth send a representative unit of your finest soldiers. We will provide transport and facilities for a 7-day exercise period. The ambassador nodded slowly. I will need to consult with my government, of course, but I see no reason why this would be problematic. What size unit would you require? A standard platoon structure would be appropriate, Krelvas replied. Approximately 40 to 50 soldiers. Ambassador Okonkwo smiled. That can be arranged. We will send a platoon from the Army's 10th Mountain Division. They are currently stationed at Fort Drum in New York and can be ready for transport within 2 weeks. Krelvas made a note of this. The 10th Mountain Division. The name alone suggested elite soldiers trained for difficult terrain. Excellent. We look forward to working with your finest warriors. The ambassador's smile widened slightly, though Krelvas could not interpret the expression. I am certain they will make a good impression. Strategist 14 solar rotations later, the human military transport vessel arrived at the Concordance training facility on the moon of Threx Prime. Krelvas stood on the landing platform with Melissarin and a full honor guard of Thexali warriors. Each member of the honor guard had served in at least 5 combat deployments and held commendations for valor. They represented the finest of the finest. The transport vessel's ramp descended with a hiss of hydraulics. The first human to emerge was a male in camouflaged military uniform, his face weathered by experience, his eyes sharp and assessing. He walked down the ramp with confident steps and stopped precisely 3 meters from Krelvas, executing a crisp salute. Lieutenant Colonel David Reeves, United States Army, 10th Mountain Division. Thank you for hosting us, strategist. Krelvas returned the gesture with a formal bow. Welcome, Colonel Reeves. We are honored to train with Earth's elite vanguard units. The colonel's eyebrows drew together slightly. I am sorry, strategist, there seems to be some confusion. We are not elite forces. We are regular infantry line soldiers. The 10th Mountain Division is an excellent unit with a proud history, but we are part of the regular army structure. The platform became very quiet. Behind Krelvas, he felt his honor guard shift uncomfortably. Melissarin's optical implants blazed brightly as she processed this information. Regular infantry? Krelvas repeated slowly. You are not elite soldiers? Colonel Reeves shook his head. No, sir, we are regular soldiers. Good soldiers, well-trained and experienced. But we are not special forces or rangers or any other special operations unit. Those are our elite forces. We are just infantry. Behind the colonel, more soldiers were descending the ramp. 43 humans in total, carrying weapons and equipment, talking and joking with each other in relaxed voices. They looked fit and professional, but they also looked remarkably ordinary. Some were young, barely out of adolescence by concordant standards. Some were older, with gray in their hair. They varied in size, gender, and ethnicity. They were not the uniform perfection of a specialized warrior caste. Melissarin leaned close to Krelvas and whispered urgently in their private language. Strategist, if these are their regular forces, What are their elites capable of? Krelevas felt a sensation he had not experienced in many cycles, genuine uncertainty. He did not know. He had made his assessment based on what he thought were humanity's finest warriors, only to discover they were merely adequate by human standards. What did that mean for the true elite forces? What did that mean for humanity as a whole? Colonel Reeves seemed to sense the confusion. Is there a problem, strategist? Perhaps we should have sent a different unit. Krelevas forced himself to focus. He had trained for 1,000 cycles to maintain composure in any situation. No, Colonel. There is no problem. We welcome your soldiers. Please follow us to the barracks. We will begin orientation in 2 standard hours. As they walked across the platform, Krelevas noticed details he had missed in his initial assessment. The human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, but it was the efficiency of habit rather than perfection. They helped each other with heavy equipment. They made jokes and laughed. They seemed almost casual. Yet underneath that casualness there was something else, something Krelevas could not quite identify. They were alert despite their relaxed demeanor. They observed their surroundings constantly. And when Colonel Reeves gave quiet orders, every soldier obeyed instantly without hesitation. That evening, Krelevas called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. The revelation that these humans were regular soldiers, not elites, had profound implications. Around the conference sphere floated holographic representations of his top 40 commanders, each a veteran of multiple campaigns. We must reassess everything we thought we knew about human military capability. Krelevas began. If these soldiers represent their standard forces, then we have grossly underestimated their civilization. Fleet Commander Thraxel, a grizzled warrior with scars from a dozen battles, spoke in his gravelly voice. Perhaps they have sent inferior troops to conceal their true strength. It would be a reasonable deception tactic for first contact. Melissarin accessed her database and projected new information into the holographic display. I do not believe that is the case, Commander. I have been analyzing human military structure through their public information networks. Their regular forces comprise approximately 97% of their total military personnel. Only 3% are designated as special operations forces or elite units. And yet, based on their historical combat records, these regular forces have been extraordinarily effective across every conceivable combat environment. Another commander, Wing Leader Sifara, studied the data with her multifaceted eyes. This seems impossible. How can a species create such capable warriors without genetic selection or lifetime training? How can ordinary individuals become effective soldiers with only brief training? Krelevas had been wondering the same thing. He had studied the human training regimen. Basic training for regular forces lasted only 8 to 13 weeks, depending on their service branch. Advanced training added perhaps another few months. Total preparation time before deployment, less than 1 cycle. By comparison, Thexali warriors trained for 20 cycles before their first combat assignment. We are missing something fundamental about human nature, Krelevas said slowly, something that makes them formidable despite their lack of specialized breeding or extended training. We need to understand this before we can properly integrate them into the concordance, and we will learn it during this exercise. Tomorrow we begin. Tomorrow we discover what makes humanity's regular soldiers so extraordinary. Or, he thought privately, we discover that we have been mistaken and these humans are simply adequate soldiers from a primitive world. But he did not believe that. There was something in Colonel Reeves's eyes, something in the way his soldiers carried themselves. They were ordinary, yes, but that ordinariness concealed something deeper, something that had allowed humanity to claw its way up from a violent primitive past, to reach the stars in mere centuries. Krelevas had led soldiers for 6,000 cycles. He had fought in 37 major campaigns. He had studied warfare as both science and art. And yet, looking at these human regular soldiers preparing for rest in their assigned barracks, he felt something he rarely experienced. He felt that he was about to learn something new, something important, something that would change his understanding of warfare itself. The exercise would begin at dawn, and nothing would ever be quite the same afterward. The demonstration dawn on Threx Prime arrived with 3 suns rising in sequence, painting the training grounds in shifting shades of amber and crimson. The facility sprawled across 20 square kilometers of varied terrain, urban mock-ups, dense forests, open plains, mountainous regions, and even a section flooded to simulate aquatic operations. Krelvis had designed it himself over 3 centuries ago, incorporating every combat environment the Concordance had ever encountered. Lieutenant Colonel David Reeves stood with his platoon in the assembly area, watching the alien sunrise with apparent calm. His soldiers had adapted quickly to the station's artificial gravity and atmosphere, though several had complained about the slightly higher oxygen content giving them headaches. A medic had distributed altitude sickness medication and everyone had adjusted. Sergeant First Class Maria Torres approached Reeves, her rifle slung comfortably across her chest. "Sir, the troops are ready. Everyone got decent sleep despite the weird day-night cycle here." "What's the plan?" Reeves consulted his tactical datapad, which had been loaded with the day's training scenario. "Looks like we start with basic squad tactics in urban terrain. The Concordance is providing an opposing force of their own soldiers. It's supposed to be a learning exercise, so keep your people sharp but friendly." Torres nodded and moved back to brief her squad leaders. Reeves watched his soldiers checking their equipment one final time. They were good people, solid professionals. Private First Class Jackson was barely 20 years old, fresh from basic training in infantry school, but he had shown promise during unit training. Specialist Okoye was a combat veteran with 2 deployments under her belt, steady and reliable. Staff Sergeant Park had been in the Army for 12 years and could practically run operations in his sleep. They represented the full spectrum of experience found in any regular infantry unit. Regular. The word still bothered Reeves slightly. The alien commander, Krelvis, had seemed shocked to learn they were not elite forces. What exactly had he been expecting? Reeves had served with Rangers and Special Forces on joint operations before. They were incredibly skilled, no question, but they were specialized tools for specific missions. The regular army was the backbone of military power, the force that held ground and accomplished the broad mission objectives. That had always been true throughout history. Apparently, the aliens did not see it that way. Krelvis arrived precisely on schedule, accompanied by Melissarin and 40 Thexali warriors who would serve as the opposing force. Each Thexali stood over 2 meters tall, their forearms ending in manipulator claws that looked equally capable of delicate work or combat. They wore adaptive camouflage armor that shifted colors to match their surroundings, and they carried energy weapons that hummed with barely contained power. They looked formidable, exactly what one would expect from a warrior species. "Colonel Reeves," Krelvis said formally, "today we begin with urban combat scenarios. Your platoon will attempt to secure a designated objective while my warriors defend it. The scenario will be conducted with training weapons that deliver sensory feedback to simulate injuries without actual harm." "Understood?" "Understood, strategist. My platoon is ready." Krelvis gestured toward the urban mock-up in the distance. The buildings rose 3 to 5 stories tall, constructed of actual stone and metal to provide realistic cover. Narrow streets wound between them, and balconies overlooked the approaches. "You will have 30 standard minutes to plan, then the exercise begins." Reeves saluted and returned to his platoon. They gathered around him in a loose circle, and he quickly sketched out an operational plan. "Torres, take first squad and approach from the south. Park, you have second squad on the north side. Third squad stays in reserve with me. We will move on foot, maintain radio discipline, and adapt as needed." "Questions?" Specialist Chen raised a hand. "Sir, what are the rules of engagement?" "Standard training ROE," Reeves replied. "Positive identification before engagement. Minimize collateral damage to structures. And if you get tagged by enemy fire, you sit out until medics clear you. This is a learning exercise, people, not a competition. But let's show our hosts what the 10th Mountain can do." The soldiers moved out with practiced efficiency. First and second squads separated and began their approaches, while Reeves watched from the command post with third squad and the platoon medic. Beside him, Melissarin observed everything with her optical implants recording at maximum resolution. Krelvis stood nearby, arms crossed, waiting to see how these regular human soldiers would perform. The urban terrain swallowed the advancing squads quickly. Torres led her people through a series of alleyways, using hand signals to maintain silence. The Thexali defenders had positioned themselves well, with overlapping fields of fire covering the main approaches. Torres could see at least 3 defensive positions from her vantage point behind a stone wall. She tapped her radio twice, a prearranged signal, and heard 2 return taps from Park's squad. They were in position. Then everything happened at once. The Thexali opened fire first, energy bolts sizzling through the air. Torres felt her armor register a near miss, the training system heating the material enough to be uncomfortable. She dropped behind cover and signaled her squad to return fire. The sharp crack of simulated rifle fire echoed between buildings. Private Jackson moved forward in short rushes using doorways and corners for cover. He had been taught fire and movement in basic training, and he executed it perfectly now. When a Thexali warrior exposed himself to track Jackson's movement, Specialist Okoye put 2 rounds into the alien's center mass. The warrior's armor flashed red, indicating a kill, and he withdrew from the fight as protocol required. On the northern approach, Staff Sergeant Park encountered a different challenge. The Thexali had placed obstacles in the street, forcing his squad into a narrow kill zone. Rather than push through, Park made a quick decision. Second squad on me. We are going vertical. His soldiers followed him into a building, climbing the interior stairs to the second floor. They moved quickly but carefully, checking corners and maintaining security. When they reached a balcony overlooking the Thexali defensive position, Park hand-signaled his grenadier. Specialist Rodriguez nodded and fired a training grenade. It arced perfectly through the air and landed in the middle of the defensive position. The simulated explosion registered on 4 Thexali warriors' armor systems simultaneously. Park's squad poured through the gap, advancing toward the objective. In the command post, Krelvas watched the tactical displays with growing interest. The humans were not doing anything particularly fancy or complex. Their tactics were straightforward, almost basic by concordant standards, and yet they were succeeding. His warriors, who had trained their entire lives for combat, were being systematically defeated by these regular soldiers who had trained for mere months. How? Melissa Wren was analyzing the combat data in real time. Strategist, I am observing several interesting patterns. The humans adapt extremely quickly to changing situations. They communicate efficiently with minimal radio traffic. They support each other instinctively, covering movement without explicit orders. And they are taking calculated risks that our warriors would never consider. She highlighted a specific sequence where Private Jackson had deliberately exposed himself to draw fire, allowing Okoye to eliminate the enemy position. That private is barely out of initial training, yet he executed a sophisticated tactical maneuver that required both courage and timing. The exercise continued for another 20 minutes. Torres and Park's squads linked up and pressed toward the objective building together. The remaining Thexali defenders fought well, but they were being overwhelmed by human adaptability and initiative. Finally, Corporal Williams, a team leader from First Squad, reached the objective marker and planted a training flag. Exercise complete, Reeves announced over the radio. All units consolidate and prepare for debrief. As the soldiers gathered in the assembly area, removing helmets and drinking water, Krelvas approached Reeves. His expression was difficult to read, but his posture suggested deep thought. Colonel, that was an impressive performance. Your soldiers demonstrated excellent tactical awareness and aggressive initiative. Reeves nodded his thanks. They are good soldiers, strategist. They did what they have been trained to do. But this is what confuses me, Krelvas said, his upper arms spreading in a gesture of puzzlement. Your soldiers trained for only a fraction of the time my warriors have trained. They do not have genetic advantages. They are not selected from warrior bloodlines, yet they performed at a level comparable to our finest troops. How is this possible? Reeves considered the question carefully. With respect, strategist, I think you may be approaching this from the wrong direction. You are asking what makes our soldiers special. The answer is nothing. They are not special. They are regular people who have been given good training, clear leadership, and a mission they understand. That is what makes them effective. But your private, Krelvas persisted, the one who drew enemy fire to create an opportunity for his teammate. He is young and inexperienced. Why would he take such a risk? Reeves smiled slightly. Because that is what soldiers do, sir. We take care of each other. Jackson knew Okoye had his back just as he had hers. Trust like that is built through shared training and shared purpose. It does not require years of conditioning or genetic programming. It just requires good people working together toward a common goal. Melissa Wren had been listening to this exchange carefully. She stepped forward, her optical implants gleaming. If I may offer an observation, strategist, I believe the humans have discovered something we overlooked in our pursuit of military perfection. We bred warriors and trained them from birth to be superior soldiers. But in doing so, we created specialists who excel in known situations but struggle with unexpected challenges. The humans, by contrast, Train ordinary individuals to be adaptable problem solvers who happen to be armed. They are not perfect, but they are flexible. And in warfare, flexibility may be more valuable than perfection. Krelva stood silent for a long moment, processing this insight. Around them, human and Thexali soldiers were beginning to interact. The initial formal distance was breaking down as professional respect emerged. Private Jackson was showing a Thexali warrior his rifle, pointing out the mechanical simplicity of the design. Staff Sergeant Park was discussing urban tactics with a Thexali squad leader through a translation device. Even the wounded from both sides were sharing water and comparing their training systems. The exercises continued for 6 more days. Each day brought new scenarios: defensive operations, reconnaissance patrols, hostage rescue simulations, disaster response, and even space-based combat in zero-gravity environments. Each day, the human soldiers performed consistently above Concordance expectations. They were not perfect. They made mistakes, took casualties, and sometimes failed objectives. But they learned from every mistake, adapted to every challenge, and maintained their effectiveness regardless of circumstances. On the final day, an unexpected crisis arose. During a mountain warfare exercise, a sudden seismic event triggered an actual rock slide, trapping 3 Thexali warriors under debris. The situation was not a simulation. The warriors were actually injured, one seriously. Colonel Reeves did not hesitate. He immediately redeployed his soldiers from the training exercise to rescue operations. Medics rushed forward with aid bags while engineers assessed the unstable debris. Within minutes, a coordinated effort was underway. Sergeant Torres directed the placement of climbing anchors to stabilize the slide area. Specialist Rodriguez, who had been a volunteer firefighter before joining the Army, organized a debris removal team. Private Jackson, despite his youth and relative inexperience, worked tirelessly alongside Thexali soldiers to dig out the trapped warriors. When they finally freed the most seriously injured warrior, he had lost consciousness and had stopped breathing. The human platoon medic, Doc Chavez, immediately began treatment. He worked with focused intensity, adapting his human-trained medical skills to alien physiology, with help from Melissarin's medical database. After 3 terrifying minutes, the warrior's breathing resumed. Krelvas watched all of this from his command vehicle, his emotions warring between gratitude and revelation. These humans, these regular soldiers, had just risked their lives to save warriors from a species they had known for less than a week. They had done it without orders, without hesitation, without expectation of reward. They had done it because it was the right thing to do. When the rescued warriors were safely evacuated to medical facilities, Reeves approached Krelvas. "All 3 will survive, sir. Your medical team did excellent work." Krelvas looked at this human colonel with newfound understanding. "Colonel Reeves, I must apologize. When your people first arrived, I believed you had sent inadequate forces. I thought regular infantry would be insufficient for proper assessment. I was wrong. I have spent 6,000 cycles studying warfare as a science, but you have shown me I overlooked the most important variable, the warrior themselves. Your soldiers are not superior because of genetics or extended training. They are superior because they are adaptable, compassionate, and courageous ordinary people who have chosen to serve something larger than themselves. That, I now understand, is the true foundation of military strength." Reeves clasped the alien commander's upper right arm in a gesture of respect that he hoped translated properly. "Strategist, your warriors are magnificent. They have taught my soldiers a great deal this week. But if I may offer one thought, perhaps the most effective military is not one of perfect warriors, but one of imperfect individuals working together perfectly." The 2 commanders stood together, watching their respective soldiers helping each other pack equipment and say their goodbyes. Language barriers and biological differences seemed insignificant now. They had trained together, bled together, and saved each other. They were not the same species, but they had become something universal, brothers and sisters in arms. That evening, as the human transport vessel prepared for departure, Krelvas transmitted his final report to the Concordance High Council. His recommendation was unequivocal. Humanity should be granted full membership immediately. But he added a personal note that only the highest-ranking members would see. "We have made an error in our military philosophy that has persisted for millennia. We believed that warriors must be bred and perfected over generations. The humans have proven otherwise. They have shown that the strongest military force comes not from creating superior soldiers, but from transforming ordinary citizens into extraordinary teams. Their secret is not in their training or technology. It is in their fundamental belief that any person, regardless of birth or background, can rise to meet the challenges before them. They call them regular forces, but there is nothing regular about what they accomplish. They are ordinary individuals achieving extraordinary things through courage, adaptability, and mutual support. The galaxy has much to learn from humanity's regulars. The transport vessel lifted off into the three-sunned sky, carrying 43 regular infantry soldiers back toward Earth. They would return to their normal duties, their families, their everyday lives. Most would never be famous. Their names would not be remembered in history books. They were, after all, just regular soldiers. But across the Concordance, word was spreading about the humans who came to train, about the regular forces who fought like elites, about the ordinary people who accomplished extraordinary things. And throughout the galaxy, military commanders began to wonder, if these were humanity's regulars, what were their elites truly capable of? The answer, though they did not yet know it, was both simpler and more profound than they could imagine. Humanity's strength had never been about having the best individuals. It had always been about making the best of every individual. And that philosophy, more than any weapon or technology, would reshape the future of the Concordance forever. The unbroken line of human warriors stretched back through history, from the first primitive tribes defending their caves to the soldiers now walking between stars. They were not heroes or legends. They were farmers and teachers, mechanics and students, parents and children who answered the call when their people needed them. They were regular, and that was precisely what made them extraordinary.